Hi, I'm Dr. Walter Matwichuk, and the purpose of today's intermittent reinforcement email message is to speak to you about overcoming the influence of the past. Rational emotive behavior therapy broke away from the traditional form of psychotherapy, Freudian therapy, and some of the neo-Freudians, who argued that the past had something to do with our present behavior and that psychotherapy should involve a deep analysis of one's early upbringing and the analysis of transference that would take place during the therapy session, where the therapist would be silent and more or less allow the person being analyzed to project their conflicts upon the therapist, and this would be analyzed. And this process went on for many years, sometimes multiple times a week. And Ellis saw this as highly inefficient and, quite frankly, dubious. He argued that these people would go over lots of material, but in the end, not learn a lot that they could use to help them change how they felt in the present and acted. So he fell back on his knowledge of philosophy, ancient and modern philosophers, and began to take some of their best ideas, put them together, and package them, and over 60 years developed rational emotive behavior therapy. REBT takes the stance that although the past may influence us, and yes, possibly traumatic events occur in the past, humans tend to maintain the past. They maintain their disturbance. In other words, they do this by holding attitudes about past events, and those attitudes are presently held. And they are strengthened on a near daily basis, so that when the REBT therapist brings to the attention of the patient these attitudes, it's hard for them to change these attitudes because they've practiced them for so many years. REBT targets attitudes and encourages people to adopt the assumption that the past is overrated in terms of its influence upon the present. Yes, it does influence us. We learn our values from our family. We observe role models and very often mimic some of the things they say, do, and think. But in the end, Ellis argued, people were born and reared to think irrationally. And he emphasized the biological predisposition we all have to take what we want and escalate it or transform it, make it rigid, and turn it into a rigid attitude, a rigid demand. So REBT really tries to empower people by showing them that although they may have been influenced by the past or possibly even traumatic events occurred, those things were in the past and we live in the present. And the only thing that we have really is the present moment and, of course, hopefully the future. And so the REBT therapist inspires the patient to give up their past and see that although the past may have taught them some bad ideas, they now have the opportunity to examine those ideas and take the good ones, leave the bad ones, and to inject flexibility into some of those values they may have learned from their parents or their culture. So rational emotive behavior therapy empowers people by saying, stop re-traumatizing yourself. Yes, bad things happen and they might have a profound influence upon you in the given moment, but then once that moment has passed, possibly even days, weeks, months, years pass, and when you go back and think about those events, you have a choice. You could think about them in a way that redisturbs you, or we should say, you could think about them in a way whereby you redisturb yourself, or you could think about them in a way that puts them in the proper perspective, leaves them in the past, abstracts whatever learning one might make from those events that could help One, navigate the world in the present and in the future. And avoid having unhealthy emotional responses in the present about past events. In other words, one can determine their emotional destiny if they're willing to accept the premise that we can change how we think, feel, and behave by work and practice. Now, REBT is considered a cognitive behavior therapy, but it really emphasizes the importance of doing, acting, putting your feet underneath the attitudes that you discuss in therapy. So rationally emotive behavior therapy says if you really want to believe new ideas, more flexible ideas, you need to live in harmony with them. In other words, we come to believe after we do things differently. Doing leads to believing. So what we're going to encourage you to do is to first assume that the past does not have to dictate the present, that you can learn new ways of feeling, thinking, and behavior. Now, it may be hard because you're so well practiced. You're a professional at disturbing yourself, at awfulizing, at avoiding discomfort and thinking that the world owes you something. But in the end, if you examine these ideas and see that things are bad very often and some things are very bad that occur, and even very, very bad things or things that people transcend every day, over time they transcend them. Maybe initially they're quite shaken by them. That people can live for today and for tomorrow. That the world doesn't owe any of us anything. That we really need to work hard to achieve whatever it is that we want. These healthy ideas at first may seem very novel or foreign, but in the end we can adopt them by thinking about their utility, seeing the empirical evidence that supports them, and then, more importantly, putting them into action, acting upon them, delaying gratification in the service of achieving longer-term goals, and see how they work in the real world. Rational emotive behavior therapy defines a rational attitude as an attitude that's realistic, not idealistic. Realistic. It works. It helps us get more of what we want and less of what we don't want. So I'd like for you to read today's intermittent reinforcement email message and then begin to apply it to your life. How are you, in some ways, holding the past responsible for your current behavior when, in fact, you could take responsibility for that behavior? How are you holding environmental conditions responsible for your current behavior when, in fact, they may contribute to your current behavior but not solely determine it? I would encourage you to work on thinking about some of these ideas and learning how to empower yourself using the principles of REBT. I would like to invite you to my weekly Zoom conversation hour where you'll see me discuss these ideas with people from across the globe on any problem they bring up and show them how they can empower themselves by adopting healthy, flexible, and non-extreme ideas for the problem at hand. At the conclusion of our 40-minute session, I'll then take questions from the viewing audience. We regularly have 100 people or more that attend, and it's a great way to learn the ideas and begin to see how they can apply to your particular problem. It's free to attend. It's on Zoom. It's every Saturday. I'm in Philadelphia, so I do it every Saturday at 9 a.m. But that's 2 p.m. in the UK, 4 p.m. in Bucharest, 5:30 in Kabul, 6:30 in New Delhi, 10 p.m. in Tokyo, and 10:30 in the south of Australia. So I hope you can join us on Saturday. You can get an invitation by writing to me at REBT and then the word doctor, doctor@gmail.com. I hope to see you on Saturday, and more importantly, I hope you take responsibility for your reactions and give up the influence of the past.